16 years ago, The Simpsons eerily predicted Donald Trump would be president.
Suckers.
The Simpsons have made spot-on predictions. These are some of them. All of these predictions came true.
What happens when a cartoon stops being funny and starts being accurate? For over 3 decades, The Simpsons has shocked the world with predictions that somehow came true. Technology, politics, even global events. But now, fans believe the show may have pointed towards something even bigger, something tied to the year 2026. And if even a fraction of it turns out to be real, we might not be ready for what's coming next. So if you're curious to see how deep this goes, make sure to follow along and subscribe, because this rabbit hole only gets crazier from here. The show that keeps getting it right. Before we talk about 2026 specifically, let's settle one thing. Why does anyone take Simpsons predictions seriously in the first place? The show premiered in 1989. It now has over 790 episodes across more than 37 seasons, making it the longest-running scripted primetime series in American television history. That is a massive amount of storytelling, satire, and cultural commentary built up over more than 3 decades. The show's writers have always been sharp. Many of them came from Ivy League schools, worked in comedy writing rooms, and were deeply plugged into politics, science, technology, and culture. They were not writing random jokes. They were writing smart satire rooted in real trends.
The Simpsons have done it again. This time they correctly predicted
They saw developing around them. That context matters a lot when we talk about why certain episodes seem to predict things. Writer Al Jean, who has been with the show for decades, once explained their supposed ability to foresee the future by saying they make a lot of educated guesses, and if you throw enough darts, you will eventually hit a bullseye. Producer Bill Oakley has also pointed out that a lot of it is simply coincidence, because the episodes are so old that history tends to repeat itself. That is an honest and grounded way to look at it, but it does not make it any less fascinating when a specific episode lines up with something happening right now in 2026. So with that framing in mind, let's look at what fans are buzzing about this year. The Trump presidency that nobody took seriously. Let's start with the most well-documented Simpsons hit on record, because understanding it tells us everything about how the show works. In March of the year 2000, The Simpsons aired an episode called Bart to the Future. In it, Bart is given a vision of what his adult life will look like, and during that vision, his sister Lisa has become the President of the United States.
Lisa Simpson taking over at the White House in the aftermath of a Trump presidency.
In one quick throwaway line, Lisa tells her cabinet, "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." That line sat quietly in the episode for over 15 years. It was not treated as a major moment. It was barely noticed. Then 2016 happened, and the internet exploded. The writer of that episode, Dan Graney, told The Hollywood Reporter that the Trump detail was intentional and described it plainly as a warning to America. He said it felt like the logical last stop before hitting bottom, and that it was consistent with their vision of America going insane. That is a remarkably candid statement. And the show actually acknowledged being right afterward. In a 2016 chalkboard gag that aired after the election, Bart wrote the words "being right sucks" on the classroom blackboard. What makes this particularly relevant to 2026 is that Trump is now back for a second term. The Simpsons also aired a 2015 YouTube short called Trumptastic Voyage that depicted a possible Trump return, which fans are now revisiting all over again. Whether you see it as genius or coincidence, this is the foundation of why people keep asking, what else did they get right? AI is eating your job, and The Simpsons saw it coming. Here is one that hits a lot closer to home for people in 2026. In Season 23, Episode 17 titled Them Robot, which aired on March 18, 2012. Mr. Burns, fires most of the Springfield nuclear power plant workers, and replaces them entirely with robots. His reasoning is simple. Robots are cheaper and more efficient. Homer is kept on as the only human employee, and the rest of Springfield sinks into an unemployment crisis. Sound familiar? Because right now, this is not a cartoon scenario. It is a headline. AI tools are already replacing workers in customer service, data entry, content creation, legal research, and medical diagnosis. A Stanford University report found that job postings for young adults aged 22 to 25 dropped by 13% since 2022 in sectors most exposed to AI. Analyses based on AI projections suggest automation could eliminate close to 100 million jobs in the U.S. alone over the next decade. The Simpsons episode even included a darkly comedic detail where the unemployment in Springfield hits nearly 99% after the robots turn on Mr. Burns and chaos follows. The laid-off workers ultimately have to come back and save the day because the machines could not replace human relationships and judgment. That particular detail is almost poetic when you look at the current conversation happening in tech circles about what AI can and cannot replicate. Stephen Keslowitz, who has written about popular culture, specifically cited Them Robot as an example of the show warning about the dangers of automation. The episode was written as satire, but in 2026, it reads more like a cautionary memo that most companies chose to ignore. A virus from shipping boxes and the Osaka flu. This one already played out once before, and fans think it might be happening again. In 1993, Season 4, Episode 21, Marge in Chains, Springfield is hit by a fictional illness called the Osaka flu. The virus arrives in shipping crates sent from Japan. It spreads quickly, causes widespread panic, overwhelms local healthcare systems, and leads to riots when people desperately search for a cure. That episode became famous during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic.
Simpsons predicting a big news event. The story this time is that the iconic TV show eerily predicted the outbreak of the coronavirus.
When people noticed the similarities between the fictional outbreak and what was unfolding in real life. Global supply chains, airborne transmission, panic buying, and a desperate search for treatments. The parallels were loud, but here is why fans are bringing it up again in 2026. At the very start of this year, the United States hit its highest surge in flu cases in nearly 3 decades. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirmed that a strain known as H3N2, subclade K, was behind the majority of illnesses, with around 11 million people falling ill in early 2026 alone, including thousands of hospitalizations and deaths. That is not a Simpsons plot. That is a real CDC report. And people could not help but look back at that 1993 episode and feel a chill. The Osaka flu episode was also notable for showing how a single health crisis can trigger a cascade of social breakdowns. Marge getting arrested, bake sales falling apart, community trust disintegrating. It is a sharp piece of social satire about how fragile public systems really are. In 2026, that fragility does not feel fictional at all. Space tourism and the celebrity astronaut. Here is a prediction that already came true in 2025, and the Simpsons fans were ready for it. In Season 5, Episode 15, Deep Space Homer, which aired in 1994, Homer is selected by NASA to go to space. The reason NASA chooses him is specific and important. They want to make space travel feel accessible and appealing to everyday people, not just trained astronauts. Buzz Aldrin even makes a cameo in the episode. Flash forward to April 2025. Blue Origin, the aerospace company founded by Jeff Bezos, launched an all-female crew on a suborbital flight aboard its New Shepard rocket. The crew included pop star Katy Perry and journalist Gayle King, among others. The explicit framing of the mission, as reported across major outlets, was space tourism and making space travel more appealing and publicly visible. That is almost a word-for-word replay of the episode's premise. NASA picks Homer because they need the average person to make space cool again. Blue Origin sends celebrities into space to generate excitement and normalcy around space tourism. The Simpsons did not predict this through magic. They predicted it because they understood that space agencies would eventually need public relations as much as they need rocket fuel. With the space tourism sector expected to grow rapidly through 2026 and beyond, with companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic competing for attention, this episode feels less like a prediction and more like a blueprint that the industry quietly followed. Smart homes that watch you back. The Simpsons predicted smart homes in the year 2001. Season 13, Episode 1, Treehouse of Horror 12, features a storyline called House of Wax, in which the Simpson family moves into a fully voice-activated, AI-powered smart home. The house manages their entire daily lives, from waking them up to cooking their meals. At first, it was wonderful. Then it becomes controlling. Then it becomes threatening. In 2026, voice-activated smart speakers, smart locks, smart refrigerators, smart doorbells, smart thermostats, and AI-assisted home systems are thoroughly mainstream. They are in millions of homes worldwide. And the conversation about these devices spying on users, sharing data without consent, or being exploited by third parties has been going on for years. The threatening part of the Simpsons episode is no longer as abstract as it once was. What makes the episode particularly sharp is that it does not frame smart technology as good or bad from the start. It frames it as seductive and convenient right up until the moment it is not. That is a very accurate description of how people actually experience technology in their homes. You love your smart assistant until you find out it recorded a private conversation. You enjoy the convenience until you realize the device knows your schedule better than your closest friend. The Simpsons was not warning people about Alexa specifically, but it was warning people about the general dynamic of trading privacy for convenience, which is a trade we are still actively making in 2026. Extreme weather and environmental collapse. The Simpsons has returned to weather disasters and environmental chaos multiple times throughout its run, and fans are pointing to several of these moments in the context of 2026. In the 1992 episode Homer the Heretic, a brutal blizzard shuts down Springfield entirely. It is played for laughs, but the underlying image of infrastructure collapsing under extreme weather is hard to ignore when you look at what happened in early 2026. In the very first week of January 2026, a massive cross-country winter storm swept across the United States, threatening millions of lives and triggering emergency declarations in multiple states.
On a bitterly cold day of the 26th of January, tens of millions of Americans were seen digging out a foot of snow.
Fans across social media were quick to bring up the Homer the Heretic episode as yet another eerily timely coincidence. The Simpsons movie, released in 2007, goes further than a single snowstorm. The film depicts Springfield being encased in a glass dome after the Environmental Protection Agency decides the town is too polluted to be allowed contact with the outside world. The root cause is Homer dumping a silo full of pig waste into the lake, leading to catastrophic environmental contamination. While the glass dome is obviously exaggerated for comedy, the underlying theme is deadly serious. Environmental decisions made for convenience and profit lead to disasters that entire communities pay for. In 2026, with climate-related weather events continuing to intensify globally, with insurance companies pulling out of certain states due to disaster risk, and with ongoing debates about industrial pollution, The Simpsons movie's environmental premise does not feel like a cartoon anymore. It feels like a fax from the future that got buried under a pile of joke merchandise. Aliens, Disclosure, and the Springfield Files. This one is more speculative, and that is actually part of what makes it so fun. In Season 8, Episode 10, The Springfield Files, which aired in January 1997, Homer claims to have seen an alien in the woods. Two FBI agents, played in parody by Leonard Nimoy, come to Springfield to investigate. The episode is a loving spoof of The X-Files, but underneath the comedy, it treats the idea of alien contact with a kind of playful seriousness. In recent years, and particularly heading into 2026, the conversation around UFOs and what the U.S. government may or may not know about extraterrestrial life has genuinely shifted. Congressional hearings in 2023 and 2024 included testimony from former military personnel and intelligence officials about unidentified aerial phenomena, which is the current official terminology. The subject has moved from fringe conspiracy territory into formal government hearings and news coverage on major outlets. Some fans have pointed to the Springfield Files as a symbolic prediction of this shift. The idea that what was once laughable will eventually be taken seriously at an official level. Now, is The Simpsons predicting alien disclosure? Probably not literally, but the episode does capture something real about the cultural trajectory. That fringe ideas have a way of migrating toward the center over time, and that official institutions are often the last to acknowledge what the public has been wondering about for decades. Could 2026 be the year something more concrete comes out about this topic? Nobody knows. But it is a genuinely interesting question, and The Simpsons asked it 29 years ago. World War III and the episodes. People don't want to be right. This is the one that makes people genuinely uncomfortable, and understandably so. The Simpsons has touched on the idea of a third world war more than once throughout its long run. In a 1987 Tracy Ullman short, Homer becomes convinced that World War III has already started and rushes his family into a backyard bomb shelter. The joke is his paranoia, but the image sticks. More significantly, in the 1995 episode Lisa's Wedding, which features a flash forward to the year 2010, Lisa's British fiancé casually mentions to Homer and Bart, "We saved your backside in World War III." It is delivered as a throwaway line, a piece of future history treated as old news by the characters. The fact that it is casual, almost boring to them, is what makes it unsettling to audiences in 2026. Global tensions today are genuinely elevated. Ongoing conflicts in multiple regions, strained diplomatic relationships between major world powers, and intensified debates about nuclear arsenals are all part of the current news cycle, in a way they have not been for some time. Nobody is saying The Simpsons has scheduled a third world war for 2026. But the show's writers, who were always sharp observers of geopolitical culture, included that reference for a reason. They understood that the possibility of catastrophic conflict is never as far in the rear-view mirror as people assume. The show is at its best when it makes you laugh at something that, if you think about it for too long, is not funny at all. That particular World War III gag is one of those moments. In 2026, it landed differently than it did in 1995. The rise of surveillance and the loss of privacy. Long before facial recognition cameras became standard urban infrastructure, The Simpsons was poking at the idea that someone is always watching. In Season 10, Homer to the Max, Homer's name ends up being used for a cool TV character, then a bumbling one, illustrating how public perception and media identity can be shaped entirely without a person's input. In To Surveil with Love, the town of Springfield installs cameras everywhere following a security scare, and citizens quickly lose any sense of privacy in public spaces. These episodes feel almost quaint now. In 2026, facial recognition technology will be used by law enforcement agencies, retail stores, airports, and even some school systems. Data collected from your phone, your car, your smart home, and your online behavior is bought and sold in markets that most people know very little about. The conversations happening in governments and courts right now about where surveillance ends and civil liberty begins echo exactly what The Simpsons was mocking decades ago. The show never took a heavy-handed political stance on surveillance specifically. What it did was use humor to reveal the absurdity of how casually people accept the erosion of their own privacy. In Springfield, nobody really fights the cameras. They grumble and go on with their lives. In 2026, that is a pretty accurate description of how most people respond to the real-world version of the same situation. The Simpsons movie, too, and the future of the show itself. Here's something that gets overlooked when fans focus purely on episode-based predictions. The Simpsons as a franchise is at a genuinely interesting crossroads heading into 2026, and that itself feels like part of the story. In April 2025, the show was renewed for 4 additional seasons, confirming it will run well past 2026, all the way toward 2029.
The Simpsons is on track to break a major TV record, as the hit animated series has been renewed for both seasons 29 and 30.
That renewal also confirmed that 60 more episodes are on the way, which is a significant vote of confidence from Disney, which now owns Fox's entertainment assets. The show that has outlasted presidencies, pandemics, recessions, and technological revolutions is still going. And then there is The Simpsons Movie 2, which is currently slated for release on July 23, 2027. The original Simpsons movie came out in 2007 and was one of the biggest animated theatrical releases of its era. A sequel nearly 20 years later is an enormous cultural event in the making. Fans have already started speculating wildly about what predictions the new film might plant for the 2030s. Will the writers consciously try to encode something into the story? Knowing the creative team, they probably already have. Some fans online have even speculated that the show could be building toward a finale tied to the movie, though the renewal through 2029 seems to make that unlikely for now. Either way, the franchise is very much alive, very much culturally relevant, and very much being watched by people who believe it knows something the rest of us do not. Why do we keep believing The Simpsons is psychic? Let's be honest about something, because the show's own producers have been honest about it. The Simpsons is not actually predicting the future. What it is doing is something more interesting and arguably more impressive. It is identifying the direction society is already moving in and following that thread to its logical endpoint. When the writers put a Donald Trump presidency joke in a 2000 episode, they did it because Trump had already been publicly flirting with a presidential run since 1999.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. How bad is it, Secretary Van Houten?
We're broke.
The country is broke?
When they wrote an episode about robots replacing workers, they did it because automation and the fear of it was already a well-documented economic conversation. When they depicted a smart home that turns on its owners, they did it because the implications of AI-managed environments were already being discussed in tech communities. The show is not a crystal ball. It is a very long-running, very smart piece of satire, written by people who pay extremely close attention to where the world is headed. And when you produce over 790 episodes of content spanning more than 3 decades, some of those educated guesses are going to land with remarkable accuracy. As Al Jean once put it, they throw a lot of darts. The ones that hit the bullseye are the ones you hear about. That said, Here is the part that is genuinely worth sitting with. The things The Simpsons has predicted are almost never good things. AI taking jobs, pandemics, environmental collapse, political chaos, surveillance creep. If the show really is a mirror held up to society's trajectory, then perhaps the most important thing to notice is not that they got it right. It is what they kept warning us about. The Simpsons isn't psychic, but it remains television's sharpest social satire. For over 35 years, its writers have tracked where society is heading. Now, its past episodes on AI, pandemics, climate, and politics feel eerily relevant, raising questions about coincidence, insight, or history repeating itself. If The Simpsons writers really have been slipping quiet warnings into their episodes for decades, and so many of those warnings are now staring us in the face in 2026, which prediction are you most hoping they got completely wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments.